and welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And welcome to our guest, Claire Lebowitz.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, producer of Bradass 87 and someone who's been on the show before talking about Afghanistan, but now you're talking about Bradley Manning. And maybe we could start off by talking about Bradley Manning, the Army. I don't, what is his rank? Was he a private?
He was a private, yeah.
Yeah, Army
he was
private.
An intelligence analyst and then was demoted. But, yeah.
Okay, he was an intelligence analyst, and of course among his analyses was the thousands and hundreds of thousands of files that he released to WikiLeaks. At least we'll be hearing that under oath,
right?
Allegedly. But I
he's
think
entered a plea. So
yeah, he's entered a plea.
We can stop saying allegedly now.
So he's entered a guilty plea.
That was in February, yeah.
Okay.
All right. But it's not a guilty plea to all the charges.
Correct. It was the lesser charges, the 10 lesser charges, because he has 22 charges against him.
Right.
Oh, okay. So he's not admitting to everything.
Correct, because he has espionage and aiding the enemy. The government's trying to push that on him.
Super serious charges.
Right, and then the
Which he's not
military,
pleading guilty to.
the military system is a little bit different than the civilian system. They allow you to split your plea and all these kind of things that they don't
So
allow.
he's being tried in a military court.
He is, and actually the conditions of the trial are very unusual because it is military court. They have a lot more leeway in sort of doing whatever they want, and there's sort of unprecedented secrecy in this trial.
So they have different rules of procedure than a...
Yeah, they're not releasing transcripts at all.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even buy them?
No, the government's not releasing them. You can
Right.
get them online from someone who... Alexa O'Brien makes amazing
We've
transcripts.
had Alexa on the show before. Yeah,
So she takes great notes and publishes
Right.
them on the internet, but they're not official. And they will have closed sessions. They're called Secret 802 conferences, where I guess things are being decided in secret, and then they say something else in open court. So you really only know what's going on if you're in the room. And pre-trial's been going on for 2 years now, for a year and a half.
Wow, so that's amazing. So the trial actually is coming up. It begins on June
3rd.
Right? And we'll be listening to this on June 4th. So it already started yesterday. But Bradley Manning, I mean, whistleblowing is becoming like a dangerous occupation.
Absolutely.
Well, would you categorize him as a whistleblower?
I would.
Yeah.
In the chat logs that Wired magazine published, which led to his arrest in Iraq, and it's part of the play as well, he talks about having had an experience where he was asked to investigate 15 Iraqi detainees being taken into custody and find out who the bad guys were, and he found out that they were peaceful protesters, essentially wanting to know where all the money was going that was being dumped into their country. And so it was following the corruption trail in the government, and he knew that they were being turned over to the Iraqi Federal Police and they would be tortured. And he went to his superior saying, "You've got it all wrong." And his superior told him to shut up and find out how to get more detainees. Right. So this is like sort of a classic whistleblower story of seeing wrongdoing, going through the chain of command, and then feeling like there's information out there that needs to get out.
Right, and in fact, you are producing this play, Bradass 87. I've seen parts of it. Have you actually presented it from beginning to end?
We've had readings, but not a full production yet.
Right,
now, why is the name of it Bradass? What's the
Bradass
number?
87. That was his screen name in the chat logs.
Oh,
so he was born in 1987, and Bradass was his screen name.
And that's his name. And so he was actually chatting with another person.
Correct. He reached out to Adrian Lamo, who is he is the government informant who turned Manning over to the military.
How did Bradley Manning wind up spilling his heart out over a long period of time to a government informant?
Because Lamo was kind of a famous hacker. He was known as the homeless hacker. He had hacked into the New York Times and put his name on an op-ed, and this was years before. So he had gone through a plea deal and had to pay, I want to say $75,000, but he was on probation, and he had been in and out of mental institutions, and he, I believe, had problems with narcotics. And
so hacking into the New York Times and changing their op-ed isn't just a funny thing to do. That's a major crime.
Apparently not. This is what we found out.
Apparently it's a major crime.
Yeah, so Manning found Lamo because there's a movie that was made about Lamo called Hackers Wanted in the, early 90s, and it was on the internet, and Lamo had said, anybody who downloads this film, you should donate to WikiLeaks. And so he reached out to him via email on an encrypted message that Lamo suggested that they chat on Instant Messenger. And Manning was sort of, no one knew that he was the source because WikiLeaks has an anonymous encryption server so that you can send them information, they don't know who the source is. Which made them successful. There are plenty of other whistleblowing sites that weren't successful.
The key thing, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of emails were released through this operation through Bradley Manning, but I think the video, the key was the video Collateral Murder. I was thinking of the name Collateral Murder, which I've actually played on this air a while back, and it's sort of scary to play because I don't want to, freak people out, but it's innocent people being machine gunned in the street, but from a
they're Reuters journalists, actually. They have cameras on their shoulders, and they're in an Apache helicopter through the crosshairs. It looks like a video game, and there's subtitles, and they're talking about how they're sort of bloodthirsty. And Manning talks about having seen that and wanting to the American public to see it, because it wasn't even classified, actually, but the government was not releasing it to Reuters. They were looking for this video, but they wouldn't give it to them.
I see. So then it was released, and that's
through WikiLeaks. Yeah.
Right now, why you see that on the surface does not affect this national security of the United States,
which is why it wasn't classified.
Right. It wasn't any secrets there really, unless shooting people, innocent people, and shooting journalists is something you want to keep from the public.
Right. It's embarrassing.
It's an embarrassment. And in fact, it was an embarrassment, and isn't really that's what the government is saying, that we have a right to control embarrassing information.
Yes. And how was he privy to all this kind of information? Because of his job.
Yeah, as an intelligence analyst, he has access to SIPRNet, which is the sort of insular classified network. And he had, it's an important thing to know that he had top secret clearance, but everything that he released to WikiLeaks, there was only a small amount that was secret, and most of it was classified, and much of it was unclassified. So he didn't release the highest classification that he had access to.
But some of it was classified.
Right, he didn't release top secret information.
Correct.
Right. But some of it was classified information.
And secret, yeah.
And secret, and those are pretty highly protected as well.
Now, what developed your interest in this? Why did you become interested in this case? What made you think it would make an interesting theatrical production?
My interest was, I had read the chat logs. A friend of mine suggested that I read the chat logs from Wired magazine, which led to his arrest. And it's sort of 4 days worth of chat logs. And he talks about, and he was in Iraq when it happened, and he talks about growing up in a small town in Oklahoma and he's sort of super smart and really great with computers and openly gay and never sort of accepted anywhere, and then joined the military because he was a poor kid without a lot of options who wanted to go to MIT and go to college. And the way that he writes in the chat logs I found so emotional and sort of heart-wrenching. And for me personally, I felt attached to the story because of my trip to Afghanistan and my feeling of connection to people over there and experiences I've had over there, and the way that they live in fear and uncertainty and really horrible sort of situation for children that are innocent. And then my involvement in Occupy, I sort of see Bradley Manning as the patron saint of Occupy in a lot of ways, because when the State Department cables were released by WikiLeaks, was one of the catalysts for Tunisia to start happening, for the revolution in Tunisia.
Information came out that was critical of the Tunisian government and showed that they were working with the United States to...
Well, essentially it showed that the Tunisian cables talked about the corruption within the Tunisian government itself, and how, because you don't get, and when you live in a dictatorship, you don't get correct media information. So a lot of countries
it's all filtered by the government.
Right. So a lot of countries see the State Department cables from the United States as sort of a authority on what's really happening in the world, and they talked about how the Tunisian government was sort of hoarding a ton of money, and they had all this land, and the dictator's wife was importing her oranges or whatever, and people were living in horrible conditions.
Right. So just terrible waste and corruption.
Let them eat cake, as the old say.
Exactly.
And look what that led to in the end.
Right.
Right. So, okay, great. So that's very interesting. So
and so all this touched you in a compassionate way.
It's sort of, the concept kind of came to me fully formed because it's all composed with documentary source material.
Okay.
So I just started doing a lot of research, and After he was arrested and brought back to the United States, he was held in solitary confinement at Quantico Marine Corps Base in Virginia.
Yes.
And his conditions of solitary confinement I found really tragic and compelling. I sort of drew from, I worked as an assistant director on The Brig, which was a living theater play from 1964.
Absolutely, a classic living theater production.
Yeah, and so that started off the whole living theater experimental trajectory.
Yeah, thinking of it in terms of a theater piece.
And putting the audience in that experience of having the sort of structure be the antagonist. So the conditions that he was held in solitary, he was interrupted every 5 minutes by guards, and he was made to respond to them. He was it escalated to the point where he was stripped naked at night. He was in his cell for 23 hours a day and only let out for an hour with his legs chained together. He couldn't move around too much or sleep during the day or lie down or have back support or exercise.
So do you have an actor depicting this physically and speaking the words?
Yeah, so it's sort of condensed time where he is in solitary confinement, but also in some ways inside of a computer where information is projected throughout the space, and he's having this reliving this conversation with the screen essentially. So it's like a computer voice and text.
So is it a one-man show? Is it?
No, because there's guards. So
okay, so there are other characters.
The conditions in The Brig escalates throughout the play, but also we've brought in other voices with different rewrites. So Hillary Clinton is a voice in the play. Obama is a voice in the play. Daniel Ellsberg is in the play.
We have a clip, by the way. We have some clips from your play. Maybe what we should do is go now to the clip.
Yeah,
Accused whistleblower Bradley Manning has been imprisoned for over 900 days and has been subject to cruel and inhuman treatment.
You'll recall Private First Class Bradley Manning, or Bradass 87 as he called himself, is awaiting court-martial hearings. Prosecutors say he leaked thousands of restricted military documents online via WikiLeaks.
Is Bradley Manning a heroic whistleblower or a traitor?
What Bradley Manning is alleged to have done, what WikiLeaks did, was an act of incredible nobility, bringing immense amounts of transparency to the United States government and its war actions, ones that are usually shrouded in complete secrecy or real threat to democracy.
Bradass 87 is an experimental documentary theater piece providing audiences a glimpse into Bradley Manning's conscience while stationed in Iraq, as well as his abusive conditions in prison. The play is set in solitary confinement at the Quantico Marine Corps brig. The dialogue of the play is taken from the actual chat logs which led to Manning's arrest in Iraq.
Claire Lebowitz, pretty interesting.
Pretty
That's your-
powerful presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
That
And
was Jailhouse Tapes who made that video, so she did a great job.
She
that
certainly
was
did, yeah.
actually the conditions that he was held in, Bradley
It's a
Manning.
6 foot by 9 foot cell.
6 foot by 9 foot. That's incredible. That's like a really small bedroom, all right? Just enough room for a bed.
Yeah.
All right? So, do you have permission from Bradley Manning to use these tapes, or did you?
Well, the chat logs were published by Wired magazine, so it's sort of a journalistic source. And I've written letters to Bradley, but Bradley doesn't really write back. With an ongoing trial, I think he is pretty cut off.
Right.
But he does receive mail, so I think he's gotten my letters. Alexa O'Brien's transcripts, she doesn't want them used for commercial purposes, and she's been kind enough so far to let me mess with them, because
Okay.
she's really
And put some of that material into this as well.
from the trial, yeah.
It sounds like from the initial idea it's been developing.
Very much so, yeah. And right now also we have a new director, David Schweitzer, is connected to the project, and he directed the reading that we did at the Culture Project in December.
Now, how long
been
of
really
a
helpful.
piece is this? Like, in its
The whole
final
script is probably
vision.
about an hour and 20 minutes.
okay,
hour
so a
and 15.
full-length theater piece.
Now, is there
Correct.
anywhere people can see? Are you going to be performing this anytime in the?
Well, we've been doing street theater version, so there's like an 11-minute street theater version, and
Right.
when I find that when you do the confines of the cell, like just put it on the ground, 6 foot by 9 foot is very powerful. And so there's a bare bones street theater version, and we're doing it at the Day of Action on June 1st, which is right before the trial starts at Fort Meade. And we're looking for a theater to at least let us start doing readings of it regularly.
How can people get in touch with you to find out more, or to help you, or to follow up on that
Yeah,
request?
the website is bradass87.wordpress.com, and you can find us on Facebook at Bradass87 Play. The Twitter is at Bradass87OWS. And we're looking towards a full production, but I think it's an important enough story that is not getting out in the mainstream media that people need to have it run like regularly. So that
Well, that's
the
what I
press
was
can
going to
write
ask
it.
about doing the 11-minute thing. Is that basically an outreach thing to inform people about what's going on?
Yeah,
Like,
very
what do you
much so.
think in terms of the general population? How many people do you think recognize the name Bradley Manning?
Not many. I find pretty
low.
often that when I talk to most people who aren't activists, they are like, who? What are you talking about?
Right.
Pretty often. And it's pretty unbelievable considering what we owe to him and sort of the unprecedented nature of this case. And well, I mean, it's the secrecy surrounding it and the way that the corporations control our information and entertainment channels. There was recently just this last weekend, a film was released by Alex Gibney, a documentary about WikiLeaks, and I saw it at Lincoln Center, and I found it really, really dangerous and tragic. Some of the innuendos and assertions
Really?
that he's making,
Like
especially
what?
with an ongoing trial.
Oh, you mean about Bradley Manning?
About Manning and about Manning's connection
Not
to Assange.
philosophically.
Okay.
but-
No, because
yeah,
he's
but
saying it's a
specific
documentary,
things,
and
yeah.
yet he did it. Nothing. There have been some slander TV documentaries that have already been made. Like Frontline did one, and The Guardian did one.
Sure.
And trying to pathologize him and turn him into kind of a crackpot.
Well, I've heard a lot of rumors about him. You know, going from gay to he's a trans to, all sorts of things. And of course, I have no idea how you would assess whether any of those things were true or
Well,
not.
that all comes from the chat logs, because in the
Okay.
chat logs he does talk about wanting to transition and live as a
Okay.
woman. and we don't know the veracity of that. There's a lot of like things. I mean, Lamo had an ex who was a male to female transgender, so maybe Manning had, people try on all kinds of different personas on the internet. Manning is also 5 foot tall and about 100 pounds.
Oh,
and
he's a tiny person.
He's very, very small.
That's tough for the Army, right?
Exactly, and to be he's always openly gay. Everyone knew that he was gay, always, and I don't think he was met with a lot of acceptance ever in his life. So I wonder about...
He was from Oklahoma, is that right?
Central Oklahoma, Crescent, Oklahoma, sort of rural Oklahoma.
It's a tough place to be
He refers
gay.
to it as, more church pews than people. And he was also an ardent atheist and always has been, which is...
Another
Interesting.
sort of outsider thing in that kind of a community.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But when he took the stand, I was there when he spoke for the first time in public.
Tell us your impression.
That was in December when he testified at the Article 13 hearing about his illegal pretrial confinement. And I was also there when he spoke and read his plea, admitting to releasing the Afghan war logs, the Iraq war logs, Guantanamo files, and the collateral murder video. He's very impressive. I was very impressed with him because...
With how articulate or how
He's
intelligent?
very smart. He is super charming.
Oh.
Like, you would think that and when you throw your weight behind someone that you've never heard speak before, you don't know necessarily what he's going to be like, but I felt he was really strong and had a great moral conviction, and I don't think that he regrets having given people this information or the fact that he thinks people need this information and he wants to spark debate.
What would you say in your play that you heroicize him, or?
I would like to, but I mean, I try not to be. There's certain things that I've edited out because I want to respect his privacy, and also there's certain things about whether or not he communicated with Assange that we don't know about.
Right.
And I don't
Things
want
that
to.
nobody knows.
Well, the government would like to say that they know, but I don't want to sort of
assume that they do.
Yeah. So I think he's a hero, but I also try to give context for why it's important to people, because just sort of learning about this person and seeing the way that he was treated isn't necessarily the whole story. You need to know how significant this information was for the entire world,
Right.
and sort of the firestorm that it set off in Washington.
Now, what kind of reaction do you get on the street from the general, like you're in front of the library in that video?
That was a rally for Manning. And so we were one of many. There was Alexa O'Brien spoke, Chase Madar spoke, who wrote a book, The Passion of Bradley Manning. Stanley Cohen spoke, who's one of the lawyers for Anonymous. And people are really struck by it. I think it's really powerful, and the way that I've developed the street theater piece is that it ends with audience members reading Bradley's words from the chat logs and being arrested by the guards and then thrown in the cell, and then another one does it
until
and then
you
they're thrown
filled
in
it
the
with
cell.
people.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, because it is
it's
scary.
the Spartacus
to have
or the I Am Bradley Manning campaign, which you see everywhere. Everybody's putting on their
like
websites and their Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. I am Bradley Manning, and it's all different walks of life. So I can't be. Some people in America seem to care about what's going on, because when I see those pictures of all the people saying I am Bradley Manning, they don't look like the usual radicals. It's all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, it's interesting to see who shows up to the trial too.
Something is touched about what he did. Is touched, and maybe it's because as Americans, when we talk to people who we know have been to Afghanistan and Iraq and they come back, we know what's been going on.
And for me, it's nonpartisan. It's like the truth.
Right.
So
it's hard
how to reckon with that, and that's the first thing to be able to do before
and
there's
it
any
becomes
justice.
an issue because when My Lai happened, America split between people who said this was wrong and people who said whatever happens in war, you never criticize your government. And so you have these two sides that things polarize around.
And Daniel Ellsberg has been a great supporter of Bradley Manning. He started the Freedom of the Press Foundation that's now raising money to get a court stenographer for the public in the courtroom.
And of course, Daniel Ellsberg, the Pentagon Papers.
Whistleblower.
Yeah.
And he went through this, although he didn't get nearly as much trouble.
Through this.
I've interviewed him, and he told me that everything that Nixon did to him that he would have that got him off essentially because of government misconduct is legal now. since the Patriot
Yes.
Act.
They
and
expanded the powers of the presidency
Obama's
to
war on
accommodate that.
whistleblowers.
Yes.
As Mr. Rosen from Fox News discovered, and the AP and Associated Press, when they actually were watching his, without any end to it, they were just putting a tap on his email box and any conversation he has. I don't think he could be a journalist again. I don't think any journalist could actually do things the way they did it in the past now.
Right.
After hearing that, it's obvious that the government has a lot of power through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and the Patriot Act to just do a fishing
Now the
expedition.
NDAA and
These things that are coming up, right?
AUMF.
Which are all basically modifications
one
and
initial
you know,
on the
modernizing
other. It's
and
terrible.
bringing into the new world these same kind of rules and ideas that started back in the 1970s when they legalized it back then. I mean, and FISA really legalized a lot of this stuff. We see a lot of the same names. Judge Royce Lamberth. I
Yes,
couldn't believe I
just
saw
came
his
up
name
again.
again.
Exactly.
You know, 20 years ago he was doing this kind of
He
stuff.
was the head of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
The Maytag repairman of all
Yes.
courts. But anyway, we have a minute and a half. What would you like to leave people with, Claire Lebowitz?
I guess to find out more about Bradley Manning and follow our play, also we're doing, I'm working with Birgitta Jonsdottir, who is a member of the Icelandic Parliament, one of the producers of the Collateral Murder video, and we have an anthology of creative works about a lot of the issues surrounding Bradley's case that we'd love anybody to contribute to. So you can find
Oh,
that
so you're
on our
taking
website.
submissions.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so we hope to have 1,001 entries for the 1,000 nights that Bradley spent in jail. There's
Oh,
also
interesting.
the Street Theater script is also on the internet. If anybody wants to do the Street Theater performance or change it or whatever, it's on bradass87.wordpress.com, and you can video it and send it to bradasses@gmail.com.
All right, great.
Great,
So that's how they get in
excellent.
touch with you. That's great. And we have about a minute left, and just talking about the concept of where is America heading? I mean, is this a country that's going to... Yeah, in the last minute, I mean, are we living in a country that's giving up all its principles that it was founded on?
I feel like we've been asleep for 10 years now, and there has to be some pushback because the things that we fought the American Revolution for are just sort of out the window now with like the NDAA and conflating military rule.
Do you
and
consider
civilian
yourself
rule.
a patriotic person?
I consider myself a global citizen, and I would like to fight for the rights of all people in the world. So if that's a something that Americans believe in, I'm patriotic.